Well, I've always wanted a tentacle porn monster movie. Looks like I finally got one. How's it going, YouTube? Gage Burgi here to talk to you guys about Life. The movie. Well, that sounded really deep. So Life is a new science fiction film that stars Jake Gyllenhaal, Ryan Reynolds, Rebecca Ferguson, Hiroyuki Sanada, and two other actors whose names I'm not going to butcher. And this film follows a 6-person space team whose mission is to study the soil that's been collected from a space probe that's headed to Mars. Upon doing so, they discover, what do you know, extraterrestrial life. And then shit hits the fan, and the rest of the movie progresses from there on. Basically, the best way I can describe Life to you guys is that it is a grade B version of Alien. Everything you see in this movie, you have seen done in other science fiction films before, and done much better. Now, I believe your enjoyment of this film will ultimately depend on how much of an issue that is for you. Are you the type of person that doesn't really care if a film has a somewhat familiar narrative to it, or are you just going to be all like, okay, this film's just a bullshit, like, Alien ripoff? Decide that for yourself, and that'll probably ultimately dictate how you feel about this movie. Me personally, I don't mind if a story seems somewhat familiar, as long as the overall execution of it is really good, and as long as the filmmakers are able to put some kind of a twist on it and make the film feel like it's able to stand on its own and stand out. A perfect example of that is last year's Best Picture winner, Moonlight. A movie with a pretty familiar narrative. I mean, a black person growing up in a really terrible neighborhood. We've seen that done countless times before. But what makes Moonlight so great is the fact that it's able to explore this topic with so much more intimacy than any other film we've seen before. And that it's a film that really treats its subjects with respect and doesn't just reduce them to stereotypes. Now, does this film, Life, do that? Kind of, but not really. And honestly, as far as the overall quality of this film goes, pretty much separating it away from Alien, I would say that I was pretty mixed on Life. Wow, that sounded really depressing, didn't it? Basically, the feeling I had coming out of this movie was very similar to when I saw Passengers a few months ago. Now, granted, I do think that this movie is a little bit better than Passengers, but it's the same thing where I walked into a new science fiction film, and I came out of it with very mixed feelings. It was like, I liked a lot of things about it, and a lot of other things I didn't like about it. I was just kind of like right in the middle, you know what I mean? So that in mind, let's get to what I liked about this film first. All of the technical aspects of this film are very well done, from the cinematography, to the lighting, to the production, to the overall quality of the direction. Everything about this movie looks exactly like I would want a science fiction film to look. And I'm actually not really too familiar with the director of this film. I believe his name was Daniel Espinosa. Not really familiar with his other work or what he's done, but he's honestly a pretty good director. I thought he did a really great job handling this film, and I would love to see what else he's got up his sleeve. Particularly, I thought this movie started off with a really incredible, like, 5-minute long shot that was all in one take and was going through, like, different parts of the spaceship, and I thought that was a really strong beginning of the movie. I was like, Birdman in space? Is that what we're in for? Psh, I'm down for that. I also thought the performances across the board were very solid. Nothing too spectacular, but there are a lot of really great talented actors in this movie, and they all do their job. They don't really feel like they're just in this for a paycheck or anything like that. They feel like they all want to be here, and I feel like they're giving very committed performances. And once the alien is officially introduced in this movie, I feel like it gets really intense, actually. There are a lot of really great moments of suspense throughout this film, a lot of really creepy stuff, some pretty cool original scares, and the alien himself actually looks pretty cool. I really like the design of this creature. I really love seeing him grow throughout this film as he's kind of evolving, which again is something that's very similar to Alien, but it was still really cool to see all the different forms that he goes through and to see him get stronger and stronger as the film progresses. Plus, one aspect of this movie that actually does kind of separate it from Alien is the alien's mindset in this movie. This creature is not so much of the cold, merciless, savage killer that the alien in the original Alien film was. This entity kind of takes on a little bit more of a defensive mindset and really is only going to attack if it feels like it's being harmed. Really, the only reason it is killing is because it just needs to survive. Now to get into some of the negatives with this film. I personally found that the first 20 minutes or so of this film were very, very slow. And even though I talked to you guys about the incredible 5-minute long take that begins the film that I really thoroughly enjoyed. The reason why these first 20 minutes or so really kind of dragged is because all of the characters in this movie are so unbelievably one-dimensional. I just did not care about anyone. So I was really just waiting for shit to kind of hit the fan and for this alien thing to start attacking everyone. And what also kind of bogs down this movie too is when they first discover this extraterrestrial life, they try to get all like intellectual and scientific and like philosophical on us and everything, which would be fine, but it's just not as interesting or as well written as I think they believe it to be. I mean, just last year we had the film Arrival, and the year before that we had Ex Machina, two science fiction films which I believe to be pretty much masterclasses in really intellectual and idea-driven storytelling. So this movie has a lot to live up to if it's going to try to compare to those, and it just doesn't. It just kind of comes off as mediocre, and the more intellectual parts of this script just feel very tacked on and forced. I almost feel like this movie would have worked better if it was just a really fun, relentless, thrilling B-movie thriller in which this alien's just trying to kill everyone and everyone's trying to survive. And that leads me to my next point, in which, although I did find that a lot of the moments involving the alien were very tense and suspenseful, where this movie faltered was maintaining that sense of tension. Whereas the original Alien movie, pretty much right from the opening shot, before the alien even gets introduced, you just feel like this creeping sense of dread that just keeps building and building throughout the whole entire film. And this one, not so much. At the beginning of the film, you're just kind of like, all right, the characters are really weak, the writing is pretty stiff, there's a lot of forced humor, and then when the alien gets introduced, it's all of a sudden like, okay, I'm really feeling this now. It's very thrilling. But after all that suspense and tension is built up, it just kind of really deflates every time the alien is not on the screen and you're just kind of waiting for it to come back. So that's what I mean. It just kind of has trouble maintaining that sense of suspense. Like when the alien is there, it's pretty awesome, but I feel like the movie gets distracted so much that it really just kind of deflates after a while. And this movie just honestly feels like it really ran out of gas. It really started off strong, but it just kind of didn't really seem to know where to take its whole premise. Also, there are moments in this movie that kind of don't really make sense either. An example of one of those moments is a part in which Hiroyuki Sanada's character is trying to hide in one of the pods to escape this entity from attacking him. He closes the whole like glass shield and everything, and the alien's just kind of like, you know, all over the glass, and it seems like he's trying to break through. And then all of a sudden, it kind of almost looks like, because the alien's in a pretty evolved stage at this point, that he's developed some kind of super strength, because he starts like tugging on the glass, and it looks like it's breaking, and that it's almost coming off, and it's like, okay, wow, this guy's gonna be screwed now. But then the alien just stops, and then goes away, and I'm just not really sure, like, why that happened. And so at first I was like, oh damn, this alien's OP, but then like it just didn't go anywhere. Just things like that I didn't really make sense. And there are lots of moments in which this movie doesn't really follow its own brand of logic either. And again, I just had to come back to the fact that this movie just can't escape the overall feeling this has all been done before in way better, which just makes this whole entire film overall just come off as very forgettable and mediocre. But overall, despite all my negatives, I did still find Life to be a harmlessly enjoyable film. It is pretty weak in the script department, and it really just feels like a grade B version of Alien, but it was still a pretty good-looking, well-executed, and really well-directed film with a lot of good performances. I really liked the look of the alien in this movie, even though there was one scene that straight up just looked like tentacle porn, but that's okay, I can forgive that. Even though this film did knock off my socks, I guess, like, I'm just such a sucker for sci-fi, and I did overall enjoy this movie to the point where I'm gonna give it a 7 out of 10. It's a good film, you just don't need to rush out and see this one. I would say maybe check this out in a $3 theater, or maybe even on DVD. So anyways, guys, that wraps up my thoughts on the movie Life. If you guys have seen the film, let me know what you guys thought of it down in the comments below. All my social media links are in the description below if you want to follow me on my anime list or Letterboxd, Facebook, Twitter. I'm on all sorts of different forms of social media. Hit that like button if you really enjoyed this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel for more content. Plenty more reviews to come for you guys very soon. Until then, JT, bro.